What's up, everybody? We are back for another Better Calls All Yaps. I got my friend Dank Phart in the building, a good friend that I met earlier this year. How we doing, Dank?
I'm doing so good. Really excited to be here. Been really appreciating our connection. We connected up at it was East Boulder, right? There's a lot of really
Yeah,
cool stuff popping off there. I really enjoyed that connection and just steady making moves.
1,000,000%. Um, it seems to be kind of cutting a little bit in and out on your end, but I think we're okay because we got most of the contacts. So it's good to hear your voice. Yeah, it was an absolute blast. Boulder was one of my most interesting conferences and unique conferences. It was great to meet you. As well as a lot of other awesome individuals there. It was a lot more of like a regen conference, and like I got a chance to meet some of the folks that I hadn't seen in a couple of years from the PDX side of things. So that was really exciting. But we're into we're here to chat about you. So do you want to give us a little bit of bio? Who is Dank Fart?
Yeah, absolutely. Dank Phart is a magical, mystical poet. I got the name back in 2009 when me and some friends were on an LSD journey, and a friend said, Bovard, you smoke so much pot, your farts smell like dank. And I just recently graduated college and realized like I was a poet and I wanted to pursue my life career as a poet. And so from there, I moved to Boulder, Colorado in 2011 and have been actively engaged in cultivating creative community, being engaged with independent art music festivals, and also just the kind of art community that's more than just poetry. What I like to say is I don't want to be part of a poetry scene. I want to be in an art scene that poetry is part of. So I've always had my mind towards how we can cultivate better models and spaces for really the arts at large. And that's where a lot of my work with independent music festivals was as well. And I was in an MFA poetry program in 2013 at the Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics. But I ended up dropping out a few months in. There were a variety of reasons, but a major reason was one of the professors told the whole class that was one day that basically there's no hope in having a sustainable career with our own original work, not from a lack of talent, but from a lack of industry. And she wasn't like, you know, saying that like she was just being responsible. It wasn't her being like objectively like an awful human or anything. It was just like this is the reality of it, and just whatever it is, what it is, and it kind of sucks. But like for me, I knew there were other possibilities, especially like looking out at the internet. And even though I didn't find what I was looking for back then and still have been in that journey, I knew that there were better ways to connect, which is how and like possibilities. And that's how that open-mindedness is how I found NFTs and how I eventually ended up in the East Boulder community that where we connected.
Hell yeah, I love that. Do you want to give us a little bit of that story? Like, how did you dive more into blockchain as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been curious in blockchain, living in kind of the edge fringe world in a lot of different ways. I've had friends that have been involved in crypto for a long time in various different ways with NFTs. I've had a friend who's basically who's an anarchist, lives out of his backpack, and has been living on crypto for like the past decade plus, and has pretty much done almost like no traditional work because it was just him wanting to disengage from the toxic systems and the empire. So that was definitely a how I came from seeing crypto. And I've always had friends, even like in like 2017, when like the first time it was like, oh my god, invest and like it's gonna be huge and various different things, and then it crashed, and then came back up, and then 2021, and the cycles kept coming through. But particularly with NFTs, it was a New Year's party, I believe, into 2021 that I was at, and a friend came up to me, and he's like, actually, it was the first person was a friend who's a woman who's like in the crypto world, and she knows I'm an artist, and she's like, I think there's like this NFT thing that you need to like know about. I'm not sure exactly what it is. I know you're into art. I know you're like hip to crypto, and something's going on. I'm not sure what, but I think you should know. And then like later that evening at that same party, a friend came up who has been in Bitcoin for a long time. He actually sent a satellite into space with a wallet. So when everything collapses, he's still got like some Bitcoin in orbit. But he told me what it explained it to me, and as soon as I understood that it was essentially gating the idea, the possibility of ownership of a digital product, my mind just exploded with possibility. I was like, oh my God, like this is like the huge. This is, and then I studied for like 3 or 4 months and pretty quickly realized that what I was envisioning was actually not quite possible. I was like way ahead of the game, but I was just like understanding that, I mean, it's really the value of brand, which is really what it all is. I mean, Van Gogh, it's not the paint and the canvas that is valuable, it's the brand that is Van Gogh, and then whatever cultural like things that are packaged up in with that, and that gets into a whole other can of worms. But still, like, the value is related to the art, and if the artist is built a successful brand that is interacting with the world and has impact, that it will then drive up the value through the cultural valuation of it. And so I started exploring with NFTs and like went pretty hard on them, trying to figure it out for a while. And then it never really went anywhere because you had to be perpetually online, which is so much of the current art world. And I was always, oh, like, I'm okay. I like exploring the digital realms, but like it being my whole life doesn't work for me, and it's not something that I want to work for me. And so but I was also pushing NFTs for a low hanging fruit offer at scale, because understanding, once you have like, the whole thing with digital art and digital content is, once you create it, like, it's the cost of production is met, it's 100% like ROI on top of that. You don't have distribution costs, you don't have storage costs, essentially. And so the trying to sell a piece of art when you're like slightly known for like millions of dollars versus selling like thousands of pieces for like a low hanging fruit offer, it just made more sense. And it was also thinking about the music industry and the book industry. It was like, a musician and an author doesn't make $1 million by selling a single piece, their book, one book, for $1 million. They make it by selling 10,000 albums for whatever, or a million albums by whatever, and kind of thinking about it from that angle, and then the long term value culturation of said product.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. I think there's so many like interesting parts of the digital resources that are interesting for artists and creators, but they haven't, like you said, the actual ecosystem for them to be built on, for artists to properly be able to share their kind of IP data and own their profit margin, isn't fully built out there yet. So it's really cool to meet other artists like you that are excited about the possibilities of where blockchain can go, but understand that there's a gap in what's possible on the tech side, right? And finding ways to implement and find more people to help come towards this goal is a huge part of where we're going with this out and trying to build different things here. So I'd love to know a little bit more about your artist career, if you want to give us like a rundown of like where that all started.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always been surrounded by art. Both my parents are artists, but they're also like super conservative in their own ways. So being an artist definitely was a natural inclination. As a kid, I didn't necessarily like, when I was younger, explore a lot. I mean, I played around with theater and stuff in like middle school, and was always into acting and speaking in voices and being kind of silly. And it was when I was a junior in high school that I first got into writing. I mean, I actually got into reading in first grade. I had to do first grade the first time. I didn't really like get reading, and then they had me in like the special ed class for a little bit and the second time through first grade. But once I figured out reading, it was like one of my favorite things. It was just like, oh my God, like look at the world these people are building. And I just kind of became an obsession. And so that's definitely, I guess, roots in myself as a creative and as my creative journey, and then a little bit in theater. But it was when I was a junior in high school that I figured out I was a good, I loved writing and was a good writer. I was the same teacher in English that kind of both those things happened with. He had us writing in notebooks at the beginning of class with basically no instructions except to write. And so it was just like free form writing, no prompt. And I just really fell in love with that. And then I found out I was a good writer by trying to piss him off. Uh, I would write absurdist essays, and he would also have us write in E prime, which is a very particular way of writing that you can't use any form of the word be, like to be. There's a whole list of them. I can't think of them off the top of my head because I didn't follow the assignment at all. And like I know a little bit, but I would like one of the essays. I think it was basically my magnum opus. Was a research paper where you were supposed to have three sources cited. The only source I cited was myself, and it was about how Al Qaeda was trying to take over America through reality television. And this was like in 2003, so like 9/11 was still like fresh. And he gave me a B on it, and I was just like, all right, cool. And then like the other essays were very similar, just like absurdist things, and but he kept giving me good grades. And then I wanted to do improv, and he was one of the improv coaches, and I tried out for improv and kind of was watching SNL, and I was like, oh, I think I could do that. And I made the improv team, and so then started exploring my creative career, my creative self through acting and exploring that, and did improv through my senior year of high school, and then went to college. And through all that process, those few years, I was also like just getting deep into writing and starting to discover. Actually, I discovered Kerouac and Ginsberg after high school. It was like really on the road, was like right after high school, along with Ken Kesey. And that's like my lineage of writers, is the beats and also like the Merry Pranksters and like the psychedelic traditions within all of that. So then I go to college in 2005, 2006. I've been writing essay or my notebooks, just like without much thought of just writing and just sharing my ideas, whatever. And not, and then I end up going to the University of Iowa, and I decide that within that first year, I decide I want to study theater, and I declare myself as a major in theater. And also, I have a class that's just a dedicated general lit class, and one of the sections is about poetry, and it to start off the class or that section, the teacher hands out a quote, a three-page packet of quotes about poetry. And Freud's was like, all of the dark places I've been, a poet's been before. I think F. Scott Fitzgerald said something about like living life on fire. It's also talking about like the need for like a good audience for great art to exist. And it was just, as I was reading it, I was just like, oh my God, that's what I've been doing in my notebooks for the past 3 years. And then I was like, I'm a poet. And then throughout college, I got a minor in English, studied poetry classes and just a bunch of just general English and stuff as well. So I had a really solid foundation from there, and have a degree in theater. And then after college, I remember walking down the street one day in Iowa City. It was like cold and snowy. And I was thinking to myself, like, all right, so I'm an artist, specifically a poet. How am I ever going to turn this into a career? And thinking about like the Beats, Allen Ginsberg, and also some other historical art movements, like realizing that like when artists work together, generally they can make things happen that then become bigger than themselves. And I was like, oh, make art community and plug yourself in, and then you'll be a successful artist. And that was like 17 years ago. And also put together a magazine that never with a bunch of my friends that kind of started getting me press passes and different things, and it just kind of kept snowballing. And then moved out to Boulder in 2011, which was also 20 September 17th, 2011, also the day I got off probation for cannabis in Iowa, where I grew up. Moved to Boulder to start just building community and figuring out how to build this creative career. And that's what I've been doing for the past 17 years. And I've been working heavily also with independent music festivals and hosting open mics and just being in person community, just hitting it really hard while also investigating and navigating social media without like ever really fully going in because I didn't really feel aligned with it, and I knew that there was going to be something better down the line that is now like really starting to land.
I love that. Yeah, no, we can go down so many paths there. That's really cool to hear that background. There's so many interesting things that I learned about you, so I appreciate you sharing that with us. I'd love for you to share like some of the. I know you said all the rails for the things that you envision aren't there yet, but what are the things since you found the blockchain space that you've built as ways to either use the technology to go peer to peer or do something else or meet other communities in the digital space? I'd love to know kind of like what that experience has been like.
Yeah, I mean, the one community that I really connected with and am still connected with is the temple community by Paper Buddha. So many amazing people within there. There was a time where I was like on X extensively, and I'm not sure where I connected with Paper Buddha and that beautiful family, but it was just like once I was there, I was like, oh, these are my people. And so I've released like a handful of NFTs of my poems, and I moved a few of them, but I never really felt like I found spaces beyond the Paper Buddha community that was that I really felt engaged with. I was trying to for a while, like reaching out to various PFP projects and being like, yo, I'll write you a poem to like represent the community, and then trying to get some traction within there with the community, but it never really took off. There were a couple projects that I wrote some poems for. Like one of them was what Jaden Violet. Um, and but yeah, and I never really went anywhere, but it was that was ways of just trying to offer my skills and values to community. But I never really quite found the surface that really found my way in, and then it felt like it didn't the return did wasn't enough for me in that moment, so I had to like go start to figure out other things because I'm still doing all of these jobs to pay the bills and being a parent and various different things, and I still believe in NFTs and that the way like they are an absolute foundation of where we are going in the world. But I felt like I needed to go explore other things that could potentially feed me a little bit sooner.
Yeah, no, totally. I love that. And I can totally understand that. I think a lot of people have um, kept an eye on a few different projects or different groups or communities over time, but have fallen out of like the general following along with all of what's going on there because it is a lot. It's feels like a even crazier fire hose now with AI in the mix, right? In different capacities, uh, which is crazy. It's really cool to hear like more about your background. Do you want to share some of the any of the poems that you've written or
Yeah.
something that you're um yeah or just like in general like a little bit more about some of the poems that you've written like since in the last few years.
Yeah, I'll share this one. I just wrote it a few days ago. I'm gonna be flying out to the Bay Area for an event, September 11th through the 13th. That's the launch of my friend's musical instrument library, new venue. That's a stay and play venue about an hour outside of San Francisco in the Delta. That is a man. It's got a man-made island with a huge lighthouse on top, and then a huge, really dark wood bar underneath with a couple like rooms and a couple huge historical boats that have a bunch of rooms for people that can stay in. And one of the boats was pimped out by a bunch of nerds and like tech heads in the Bay Area who had a bunch of money and turned it into like their clubhouse. So there's like a full like science laboratory, a huge like
Wow.
table that looks like you could have like the whole like superhero team hang out. And so they're going to be launching this musical instrument library as a stay and play venue there. And I'm writing this poem, turned it into a digital artifact on Meta Label, and going to be working on selling it to help raise some extra funds for myself to support myself out there. So that's kind of this next step, is like getting these first like few hundred people that are really interested in collecting my work for a low hanging fruit offer, because that gives me enough foundation. Like if I'm making $3,000 a month off of my poetry, I'm not going to be doing any other work, and then more content, more possibilities to do interviews, and it just kind of like snowballs, and my overhead like pretty much flatlines.
No, I love that. It's definitely a really cool opportunity, like poetry as a whole. I'd love for you to, yeah, share a poem to
Yeah,
kind of leave us. And I've heard a few poems, so I'm always really excited because I am not a big poetry person, but at the end of last year, there was a poet that performed at a event that I brought one of my musicians to, and I was like, okay, like, and this was after I had gotten a lot more into Web3 and learned a lot more about music, art in different capacities. Like I wasn't that into art before, but and like for me now, it's like a lot more about the story of the artist than the art itself. But and like I'm very interested in like how independent artists grow, and like that to me is like a very interesting side of things. So for poetry, it's really cool now that where I appreciate it a lot more than when I was younger and just like didn't really appreciate art at all in any capacity. So yeah, I appreciate you rocking us out with it.
yeah, it's my pleasure. Yeah, this is titled God Faked His Own Life. Life without art is a big bang that refused to bang. A ripe fruit whose veins are dry as a billion-year drought. A body of dust without breath upon lips. A big nothing burger, and not the one Buddha ate. All jobs laced up with logic to cut off imagination. Electric jolt that excites bodies to wiggle. Impulse of seed in dark to split self open. We're here to live it up, not wither away, making others rich. A life well spent isn't counted by decimals and bank account statements. It's tallied by scars and wrinkles never covered up. The stories that made heart leap from ribcage. The willingness to stumble heels overhead and keep dancing to the song in your being. The artist is permission slip to be fully alive, to listen upon the unique tune that desires expression through you, not a mere monkey dance to line executives' pockets. That collar could only be hold its grip for so long. Liveliness wiggled its way out of confinement, a self that had walled itself in for safekeeping. Art is journey to take down wall and greet yourself again, learning to take off the disguises by wearing all of the disguises, to be totally lost in process buried in its depths, turning self into seed which cracks husk. Muse sprouts tendrils that feel way through this trip. Ride undercurrent below bright, shiny material buzz. Steer for a course not on any map. Walk your life as you see fit. Many fingers point the way. None of them lead to water. A thirst that can only be quenched by drinking of self. The artist dips to the very bottom of this fathomless well, to churn imagination and weave reality upon cosmic loom, a theater whose actors have no script in a society that clipped its own wings. Now we burst dams which kept tongues silent. Let art be weeds and garden, not well manicured lawns, a place to discover our aliveness that doesn't fit in templates. Optimization and slowing down and doing less. Middle finger to the clock without discounting work. There's treasure in sweat of brow. It's a worthy pursuit which bestows craft, a journey made rich with patience that fully tasted of sensual buffet, and end ready to depart into stage wings as the curtain will be called for all of us. When that dusk arrives, there's only one question: did you juice it for all it was worth? Only thing to do is leap off stage and play in service to life. There's no role to fill but endless work to do. Open heart, lend a hand, and trust the way of nature. Grows of its own accord and spills bounty without effort. Let go and let the art make itself. It's just life doing its life thing. Get out of own way. Let creation make itself. Same as it ever was.
Heck, I love that. There's the beautiful thing about poetry is like every single person in the audience listening hears a different thing and takes a different like meaning to it, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's important. I think so many people get caught up with in poetry going like, what does it mean? And like it means all of it. And it means something. I mean, that's true for all art, but I think like poetry doesn't necessarily a lot of times doesn't have a narrative that's like, oh, here's like the thing to take out from it. It's like it is the aliveness and in the beingness of now. And so it's not, there's moments of what life is, but it's not like a narrative that's like, oh, here's the moral of said thing. It's like about being in the beingness. And then the poetry is that connection. And then you recognizing your own beingness within your own perspective that I think is really what creates that, what poetry is all about.
Perfect. I love it. Do you want to share where people can find you?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I'm on all social media as Dank Phart, Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram. I'm probably on Instagram. I post on Instagram the most. Probably the best place to find my work is on Meta Label under Dank Phart, DANKPHART, and Meta Label, METALABEL, metalabel.com. It is the platform I'm currently focusing my energy on, where you can make digital artifacts. It's also the same team behind Defos Dark Forest operating system, where I've got a community happening there and developing. And they're also the same team behind Artist Corporations, which is getting activated here in Colorado and going to really give artists a lot more tools to operate within as an independent artist. And so things like equity sharing, like that was one of the things that I wanted to do early on in with NFTs. I was like, all right, I have making 100% of the profits. Why can't I just like share part of the profits with it? But then the whole SEC things, and obviously there should be some sort of regulate, like not necessarily regulation, but like oversight, like rug pulls and all that things being like, I'm gonna give you a percentage, and like, and
Yeah.
then you just disappear with all the money. Like, so like I understand protocols and infrastructure, but that's why I'm excited about Artist Corporation, because it's going to be within a legal structure that works within the government, even though they're kind of anti-government in some ways. I'm willing to use the tools that are going to be helpful for me, but it makes it so that I can offer equity in my business as an artist. And so when artist corporations become active on the Secretary of State website next year in Colorado around July or June, I'm going to activate a private sale and fundraise for my poetry business and raise like a couple K and get this really operational.
Let's do it. I love it. Thank you so much for popping on today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for all the work.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for everyone listening in. Appreciate you guys. See you all soon.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, anybody. Let's make a more beautiful